Hi, I'm Montgomery County Auditor Carl Keith, and welcome to another episode of Auds and Ends. Auds and Ends is a program that's produced by the Montgomery County Auditor's Office. It's an opportunity for us to meet interesting people from our community and to find out a little bit more about them, to find out what they do and how they contribute to the community. And it's an interesting program we have every month, and we're glad to have someone with us today who I have known for many years. We'll talk about how long. But Alonzo Edmonds is with us today, and Alonzo works in the auditor's office, and so we're going to talk about his experience in the auditor's office and his work with the Board of Revision. And people hear us talk about the Board of Revision sometimes, and it can be confusing and mysterious. But this was something that Alonzo has worked in quite a bit, and it's Board of Revision season for us. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, and so we appreciate Alonzo being here with us today. So thank you, Alonzo, for joining us. And so I said I've known you for a long time. How long have you worked in the auditor's office?
Too many years?
No.
We're close to 18 years, I think.
18 years?
18 years. And there was a stint where I was an intern just before law school.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So you were actually worked before you went to law school. Mm-hmm. You're a local Dayton native.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, born and raised.
Right, CJ grad.
Yes, sir.
CJ grad. And let's see, and you played football at CJ, did you? And ran track.
And ran track. Heavy in the sports as a youngster.
Yeah. I know there was some other folks that I know that Matt Becker that worked in the auditor's office. You guys were on the track team together.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. So I've been around. So I've known you for a number of years.
Yes, sir.
And then so you interned with us. Was that just one summer you interned with us?
Just the summer before law school. Yeah.
Then you went to law school, University of Dayton.
Yes, sir.
University of Dayton Law School. And then, if I remember correctly, didn't you clerk some over in Common Pleas Court?
I did for the late great Honorable A.J. Wagner.
So yeah, A.J. Wagner. He clerked for A.J. A.J. was the auditor before me, and I worked for A.J. as his chief deputy. So you had that experience, went to law school, and then we had some transitions in our office, and I was looking for someone who had some real estate background, a legal background is helpful, I think. We haven't always had that, but I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
It makes a big difference when you're trying to translate to the public what it is we do.
Right. And so I reached out to you to see if you were available, and you've been with us now for 10, 12 years, or 18? Is that what you said? 18. Yeah. So we're glad to have you and your experience. Now, you had some... You've got the law school and you've got the law degree portion of your resume, but you had some real estate experience too.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a family that was active in the real estate market here in town. My mother started off as a real estate salesperson and then became a broker. This would be circa 1978 through 1997.
For those who are old enough to remember and have had that experience, Edmonds Realty,
yes,
Edmonds
sir.
Realty,
Yes,
Miss
sir.
Edmonds
Yes,
was her and your dad did a little bit, was involved a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was sort of my mother was the primary when it came to running the office. However, when it came to things like flipping houses or getting rentals that need to have repairs and things like that, my father would step up and they would work together in that effort with rental properties in the Dayton View area and Trotwood.
So that gave you a little bit of experience into the real estate world, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You did a little work in the office, did you?
Oh, yeah. I was around contracts as a young person and seeing those, listening to the discussions my mother would have with some of her colleagues about some of the issues regarding mortgages and lending in the community here at large.
Familiar with closing statements and all that kind
absolutely,
of stuff.
absolutely.
So what comes around, right? You start off and you probably thought, well, I'll never need to know this again, right? And now here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So since the time you've been in the auditor's office, you've worked for the Board of Revision. So let's tell everybody, first of all, what is the Board of Revision?
Okay. So the Board of Revision is the county arm of what is the opportunity for taxpayers to challenge their county value. The value assigned for taxable purposes. So it's the county level where it starts, and the Board of Revision is responsible for conducting those hearings. And it's the environment that gives the taxpayer this chance and opportunity to present evidence of value for taxable purposes to hopefully reduce the value and hopefully reduce their taxable burden. Now, it starts at the county level, If a taxpayer is unhappy with those results, they can appeal to the Ohio Board of Tax Appeals or their local common pleas court. And even then, if unhappy, they can appeal further to the Supreme Court of Ohio. So the county level BOR is where it starts for the process of challenging county values.
So that's one of my primary responsibilities as an auditor is to determine property values for taxing purposes. A big responsibility, can be emotional at times, controversial at times, and during the period of time that you've been in the office, we've seen some highs and lows, haven't we, in terms of property values?
Yes, we have.
And it can be, like I said, very controversial, or there's a lot of public attention drawn to this issue, more so than any time before. I've been in county government a long time, and the early days of my experience in county government, discussions of property values and things was not very prominent. We didn't have the kind of discussions that we have now, or the kind of attention drawn to it. But that's one of the responsibilities of the auditor's office, is to determine those values. But as you mentioned, this board of revision exists as an opportunity for people to appeal those values if they're not unhappy or just don't agree. They can appeal those values. And now who sits on the board of revision?
So, the Ohio Revised Code sets the rules for how these boards function. In smaller counties, it's the actual elected officials in the positions of the county auditor, the county treasurer, and the board of county commissioners, one in each seat. In larger counties like ours, there's an appointee that's given that opportunity, and again, representing the auditor, the treasurer, and the board of county commissioners, just one person for each office. So
you've been my designated representative on the board for a number of years. You're not now, but you still, on occasion, you get called into service. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can get pressed in there when we have a large volume of cases.
So
Absolutely.
some of my colleagues in some of the smaller counties around will talk about during the housing crisis that we've experienced here in the last 20 years, at different times. They'll complain to me about these record number of property value board of revision complaints that have been filed, and I would say, well, how many is that? And they'll look at me and say something like 50. Well, we've been known to get 50 in one day. So the filing period is
January 1st to March 31st.
January 1st to March 31st, and but there's a process. They have to fill out a form, and how does that all work?
Certainly. So, it is a form-driven process. I think most importantly, the public should know it's free. You don't have to pay a fee.
That's a good point.
To participate in this process. You do have to timely file your original complaint against the valuation of real property. This is a document where you get to identify yourself, identify the property, as well as your opinion of value. And that's really the key components of the form. And once we get that in our office, we're able to schedule a hearing. And a lot of people get really worried when they hear that word hearing, because their mind automatically goes to court TV and these sorts of things. But
it's not like Judge Judy.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's more of a discussion of the evidence of value that you have to support your opinion of value.
Right. So this program that is airing during the month of March. So this is the big season for us as far as we start January 1, but most of the cases get filed in the month of March, right? So we're looking up to the March 31st deadline, and that's a hard and fast deadline. But there's no wiggle room.
No, sir. The state is very clear about what we can and can't do, and the 31st is the deadline to receive those complaints.
Yeah, if we accept a complaint after that and act on it, that's grounds for dismissal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it makes the office look bad.
Yeah. So we said highs and lows. So let's go back to 2000 and what was it? 2009 was probably the record number for us, right? This was at the height of the foreclosure crisis, the height of the housing crisis at that point in time. Do you remember those days?
Those were some tough days, but I do remember them. Great experiences. We had a lot of cases. And certainly a lot of taxpayers were concerned about the market value of their property versus the taxable value of their property. And our office was able to handle this high volume of cases. I think we had like 7,000?
About 7,000 or something, something like that.
And that's a lot for a county our size. But we had the tools and the ability to conduct that and complete that docket before the end of the year, which is critical for other tax-related issues.
So sometimes we've had to that year in particular, and I think a couple of other times we've had to seat two boards, not just have one board, but would have two boards, and that's common, I think, in like Franklin County, Columbus, Cuyahoga County. I think will have two, maybe even three. I think they may have three boards board of revision, because as you said, it's important to try to get those cases heard and resolved within a calendar year.
Yes.
So we've been able to do that every year. Sometimes it's pushing it, but we've been able to do that, and it's important to us. So over the years, you've heard a lot of interesting cases, I guess, and so what are the common themes, or what makes a good argument when someone wants to file an appeal to the Board of Revision? What should be what's a good case?
Well, the common theme for anyone who looks to file a Board of Revision case is, how can I lower my out-of-pocket tax burden?
Sure.
So that's the first thing people are thinking about. But you have to kind of reprogram them to realize that this challenge process, you're not challenging what you pay out of pocket versus your neighbor. You're not even challenging the tax rate. You're challenging the value, the taxable value. It's a fight of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
The assessor says it should be taxed at this number. You feel it should be lower. And you have to create evidence that can show why. And that evidence is often centered on market value trends, whether it's an appraisal, whether it's a sale, whether it's a broker price opinion. These types of evidence help the board understand how and why this taxpayer arrived at their opinion of value, and why, or if at all, a decrease should occur. So
back during we talked about 2008, that period of time, at the height of the housing crisis, the foreclosure. So we had all these foreclosure cases in the county, and so I think that was where some people would come in and file a case and say, well, these houses have lost value, or they can't be purchased, and so that was kind of their point, right? That the market has tanked. We very low number of sales at that time, and so that was kind of the driving force behind the arguments. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes the condition of the house is an issue, though, too, right?
Carl, sometimes, if not all the time, because when the assessor sets the value, they have the disadvantage of not being able to come inside to truly inspect the property from top to bottom. These are exterior appraisals that are done to set the county value, so it's helpful when taxpayers can come in and say, the county's got me down for 3 bathrooms, but only 2 of them work.
Okay.
And that becomes a linchpin for maybe reducing the value to some degree. But all taxpayers have some condition issues that can be used to leverage a decrease in the county value, but usually not as low as they want.
What they think it will be.
Yeah.
And I again, back during the tornado, I know people would have damage to their property, but sometimes the certain neighborhoods I know where a lot of trees were taken down as part of through the tornado, and so people will that decrease the value of my property? Well, it might. It might cause someone to pay you less for your property you go to sell. But as far as a structural issue to the property, that we really couldn't consider that, right? I mean,
it's very difficult to quantify that.
Yeah.
Some person wants to have that beautiful, ash tree in their backyard and that shade. It's lovely, but the next person might not. But either way, the market should decide that. That's a challenge for any assessor anywhere.
And that's a good point you just made, the market. When people ask us, well, how are you determining these values? It's an estimate of the market value of your home. If your home was going to go on the market as of the lien date, what would a willing buyer and a willing seller agree to as the market value of that property? And that's really what we're trying to, when we determine the values, that's what we're trying to do. And so when you're appealing the value, that's what the case you're trying to make, the point you're trying to make, correct?
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges when it comes to evidence with relationship to what you just said, the first thing people look at is, what is my neighbor paying for taxes? What is my neighbor's county value? And it's important to understand that the county value is created on a process for taxable purposes. You can list your property to sell for whatever you think you'll be able to get out of the open market, but the reality is, until that sale occurs, there is no real market number to use. We're talking about the market value separate from the taxable. Even though you're challenging the taxable value, you have to use a market number. If I say, my neighbor's county value for taxable purposes is $100,000, Unfortunately, that's not going to be a successful claim for a reduction because the purpose of that number is only for taxable purposes. However, if the county value is $100,000 and I purchased the home for $90,000, now I have a market value transaction. I have a willing buyer, willing seller, all the bells and whistles I need to be able to show that this is an arm's length sale. And once you have that market data really drives what we can and cannot do as a Board of Revision.
Let's talk about what people can expect when we talk about a hearing. You mentioned it a little bit. We talk about a hearing. So after they file their appeal or their complaint, we'll get back to them with a date of when we're going to have the hearing. And we used to have these hearings in person, but we don't do that anymore. So how do we do these now?
So the Zoom meeting platform is what we've been using in a post-COVID world. The technology is really, really helpful. It's really, really affordable. And certainly, regardless of how sophisticated a taxpayer is, whether they have the technology or not, if they know how to dial a phone, they can dial in and participate in their hearing.
Right.
And so while a lot of our seniors were sort of reluctant at first, when they realized all they had to do was call a 1-800 number, plug in a meeting ID, and they're talking directly to the board, they realized that they could participate and get a good result. I think the process really, really, really flourished after that.
Yeah, we started doing this as you mentioned as a result of COVID, when we were shut down and people weren't allowed to come into the building. We weren't allowed to come in the building for a while, and so this was an opportunity. I'd never even heard of Zoom before. The only Zoom I knew was my dog would get the Zoomies every once in a while. That's the only Zooming I knew. But now it's become really, like you said, the technology has become really important for a variety of reasons. But we used it during COVID, and it worked out so well that we've continued. I don't think we'll ever go back.
No, we can't. It's too efficient, actually, and it's easier for taxpayers.
They don't have to come downtown.
No, they don't. We have people on their cell phones, riding in their cars, reaching out to us using the video camera function on their phone to participate in the hearing. So yeah, it really is convenient, and it is. It's just the utility is just unbelievable.
So it's convenient for them, for the property owners, convenient for us, for that matter. We have less cancellations because of that. Now, property owners, they don't need an attorney to do this, right?
No, absolutely not. It's not required. You can create.
You can have one, right?
Yes, you can. People do that. They make that selection at their own decision. But it's really a battle of numbers. And it's once you really boil it down to that, you realize that it's less about legal counsel and more about appraisal and market data. A broker price opinion is free.
Right.
And that is something that can be used by anyone to suggest how a value should change based on reasonable market trends.
People ask me, well, do I need to go get an appraisal done? Do I need to hire an appraiser and have them do an appraisal? And I always suggest to people, well, like you said, you can do that. You can do that if you want to. I don't necessarily recommend it. If someone gets a fee appraiser to come do their property, what are they talking? $350, $600?
It's up. It has in the last decade. It has really, really risen for a fee appraisal.
I'm showing my age. I'm showing my age when I'm saying $350, right? Yeah. So it's expensive.
It is.
It's expensive, and the type of tax break that you're trying to negotiate here, it may not even cover that.
The juice may not be worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
But each taxpayer has to make that decision.
Right. Yeah. But I tell people that the information that you need in order to make a case is readily available in the public record.
Oh, absolutely. The auditor's website has jumped by leaps and bounds with regard to the information we make available to the public. Most recently, the sales portal that we're able to use for people to be able to look and see what sales are like in their neighborhood, utilizing the mapping function.
So a neighborhood viewer, is that what it's called? Neighborhood viewer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's for what we offer and do in the Board of Revision. That's a great tool. And anytime the auditor's office changes county values in an update or a reval, taxpayers have the ability to go online and look at what sales are like in their neighborhood, because the average person probably isn't looking at what sales are like in their neighborhood. Yeah, maybe one or two neighbors, but the overall big picture they may not have an awareness of, and that really does help the public understand why and how these values are moving, as well as how likely they'll be to get a reduction in the county value through a Board of Revision hearing.
So how likely is that?
You know, the market is tough these days.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned before the 07, 08 economic downturn. You know, that was back when homes were selling at a minimum. Now the homes are selling at a premium. And even though the county auditor is taking a rear view look at these values, the market is still moving in a north fashion.
Faster than we can keep up.
And it's just really hard. An appraiser, a fee appraiser, or even a broker price opinion is going to show sales in a neighborhood that are usually at or slightly above the county value, save for some sort of condition issue or new construction issue or some sort of class issue, construction, commercial properties, agricultural properties separate from residential.
People ask us, do we have a target that we're trying to reach or something like that? And I get asked that all the time. I say, well, the state wants us to be somewhere between 92 and 95% of the market value. Now, the market's moving so fast that they have kind of adjusted that down. They'll accept 90 sometimes. But that will put us way behind if we don't keep up with it, and so that's in setting our values. Now, when you go to the Board of Revision, now that's a different ball game, because now you're looking at a specific. It's not a mass appraisal issue; it's a specific property issue, and so you can look at sales that have been like properties in similar neighborhoods, and that's an important point too, right? Is the neighborhood?
Oh yeah, you want to compare apples to apples and homes that have similar age, construction materials, and the like. It's a challenge in communities like Dayton with older housing stock, but there are homes that are selling in those neighborhoods, and those are reliable indicators of value.
The market, as we said, you and I have both experienced highs and lows. So
yes,
that 08, 09 period, 10, 11, those are the low point in the real estate market. Very few sales, lots of foreclosures. But since that time, boy, have things taken off.
Well, you think about the investors from other states or even local investors who might find a rental property in that market at that time, pay a minimum, and then be able to put in new kitchens, new bathrooms, rent it for a time, and then a decade later sell it for $100,000. We're seeing that, around the county and across the country. So, it's a tremendous.
Yeah, this is not just a trend going on here.
No, sir. But to watch neighborhoods that I was around in as a child that went through the neighborhood cycle of going down and coming back up, it is neat to see.
Yeah.
And I think that the future for these neighborhoods are really strong, and these sales are really what drives it, and the demand.
So again, if someone wants to file an appeal, they can do this online.
Yes, sir.
And the online address is
www.mcrealestate.org. Now, at that portal, when you get to that portal, you'll see a picture of a guy with a mustache and a big banner across the top, and it'll say Board of Revision.
Okay.
And when you click on that link, it takes you directly to the Board of Revision website.
Okay.
And that portal and that website portion has exactly what you need for filing that complaint form online, submitting it to our office, and then our office is able to use that data that we capture to communicate with you.
There's also some hints there as to how to prepare your case. Don't we have some?
Yeah, absolutely. We do make some suggestions on what people should consider and maybe should not consider. And
so that's interesting. What isn't a good case?
I mentioned a moment ago when people use the county value assigned to neighboring homes. Unfortunately, that is evidence that we cannot use necessarily. People often, really fixate on their neighbors and what they're paying, and it's just inappropriate to use what they pay out of pocket because they could be receiving some sort of rebate or some sort of cost-cutting measure. One lady was upset. She was in Oakwood, and she was upset about her neighbor's property and what they're paying in taxes. Well, her neighbor was receiving the homestead exemption.
And she's not eligible for one.
And that made a tremendous gap in what they were paying out of pocket. So it's, looking at sales is what's important. But, people need to focus on the value and market trends in their neighborhood. Bad evidence is anything that takes us away from that. Arguing about, my neighborhood is a high crime area. That's true. And unfortunately, the issues of high crime are baked into the sale price of homes in your area. So it's important to understand that while that's an important feature as to why you feel your value should be reduced, understand that the neighborhood characteristics are baked into the sale price.
That's the point I think people sometimes miss. Is that when we're talking about the market is taking those things into account.
Yes.
So we again, by we focusing on sales and sale price, that's how we focus on those things.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a moment ago about the state and how the state tracks sales in neighborhoods and communities. The state is looking at raw numbers and figures, whereas the local politicians have their boots on the ground to know and to really get a feel for what's happening in a neighborhood and what the trend is for that neighborhood. So, sometimes I think there's been some disagreements with regard to some of the anticipation of what the state sees as a potential value change for an area, whereas the county auditors see these areas and know that maybe that change isn't really appropriate.
This is, again, this is board revision season, and people are filing complaints, and so we're receiving complaints. Do you expect record numbers this year?
Unfortunately, Carl, no, I do not.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second year of a triennial cycle, so usually we have a low number of filings.
So the last time we updated values, like you mentioned, triennial cycle, so that was in 23,
last year.
Right. And so we're 2 years into the cycle.
Second year, yeah. We have currently 123 appeals have been filed for tax year 24, payable in 25.
Which is very low.
Woefully low. But what a challenge taxpayers have in finding credible and reliable indicators that the value should be reduced. Once we set that new value, that becomes the benchmark. Now they have to find sales that are below that, or data that can prove or suggest why the county value should be reduced.
The website, again, if they want to file an appeal or want more information, is
www.mcrealestate.org.
And so there they can file online.
Yes, they can.
Or they can mail in the appeal.
Oh, as always, the third floor of the county administration building.
Drop it off.
Absolutely. 451 West 3rd Street. Come see us.
Okay. And then if they need some assistance, we can't give them assistance as to what the opinion should be.
No,
but
sir.
we can give them assistance as to how to use our website and how to get into those. You said the neighborhood viewer will actually show them their neighborhood and what sales have occurred. We can show them that type of information.
Absolutely.
And they can use that then to make a determination. Again, we're hoping March 31st is the deadline.
Yes, sir.
March 31st is the deadline, and so we want to encourage people, if they think their value is out of whack, file an appeal. Sometimes people file appeals because they think it's too low too, right?
It's infrequent, but it does happen. The average taxpayer is paying their taxes through their mortgage. They're eyeing that escrow payment, and if it moves, that's an issue for them sometimes. But when you have a taxpayer who comes in saying, "Hey, my county value is $90,000, but my house is worth every bit of $150," we're happy to give them a hearing if they want, but we make sure they understand that if we change your county value to the increase you're seeking, then the rate times value equation will increase what you pay out of pocket.
Right.
And they quickly leave.
Because sometimes they're like you mentioned, our value is a rear view look at value is based on what the market was happening a year ago or 2 years ago, and so they may be looking ahead, and we don't look ahead.
No,
we don't look
absolutely
ahead.
Not.
And so that's kind of the difference sometimes. Or the other thing too is there's different appraisals. Our value is for taxing purposes. It's not for insurance purposes, and that's one that really gets people mixed up. Is they've got their home insured for an amount way more than what we have it valued, and that's appropriate.
But that is an approach to look at the replacement value of the entire house. That's brand new bricks and sticks, as opposed to a home that's 30 or 40 years old, and the value there very different for an insurance purpose than what we do.
Alonzo, we could probably talk about this for hours, right?
There's a lot to say.
I mean, I thought at one time we could talk about some of the more memorable cases you've had over the years.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple.
Safe to say you've heard hundreds of cases?
Yes.
Hundreds of cases over the years.
Yes. Thousands.
Thousands.
At this point.
And so this year, you're not sitting on the board this year. We have somebody else sitting on the board. We're kind of overseeing things.
Yeah, managing
and
making sure we're meeting our deadlines.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, with the numbers we're seeing, we don't anticipate doing having a record year of filing.
Absolutely.
But we do want to encourage people, if they feel like their value is too low or too high, take advantage of this opportunity. That's what is there as part of the system, and we don't get offended by it. We want people to take advantage of it and we want to be fair and equitable to everybody.
The first thing we tell people when they're in the hearing process is that, we're not here to defend the county value. We're here to evaluate your evidence in support of your opinion of value.
Right.
And that's where we focus, and that's where the results really are driven from.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your years of service to the county. I know it's a tough job, and appreciate you and appreciate your work you do. Appreciate everybody who joined us this day for the episode. And again, if you feel like you have a case, feel free to contact our office. Go on our website and feel free to take advantage of the Board of Revision. That'll wrap us up for this month's episode of Odds and Ends, and we will see you all next time. Thank you very much.